Welcome to Miss V, the Storyteller podcast. You guys know I find the best, and I'm very excited today for the guest that I have before you. I'm telling you, I am thoroughly enjoying something special that I have, but I love what we're going to talk about today, and you are going to love it yourself. So, with that said, I want to introduce you to Dr. Margo Maine. So, Dr. Maine, tell us about yourself.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. So good to meet you. We've talked a couple of times and happy to have this conversation with you because I think we'll have a lot to say and I hope people listening will like it too. I'm a psychologist. I'm from Connecticut. I grew up in Connecticut and so this is where my life has been. My work as a psychologist has been primarily with eating disorders, with women with eating disorders, all different ages, but particularly adult women and midlife women has been a passion of mine. And that's just a wonderful area to be working in because you can really help people get their lives back. And because of my work with eating disorders, I've thought a lot about how women relate to their bodies, which is included how women relate to their hair. So that's how I got interested in writing about hair and about Hair Tells a Story. So that's what we'll be talking about today. But I just want to introduce myself first.
Okay, so great. I wanted her to introduce herself and tell you a little bit because she's an author. She has numerous books out there, but also the other part of what she does for a living besides writing. And I think it's so key that we use our gifts and talents to also help people. And you're
Yes.
helping people that have eating disorders. And
Yep.
I love that. So you
Yes.
have multiple different facets about yourself, but they basically mean you're a helpful person. You like to help people to thrive, to
Yeah.
get better, and to feel good about themselves. So,
Yes.
because I am a storyteller and my podcast is about storytelling, so Margo has a story that she's going to share with us. So, Margo, tell us your story.
Okay. So my story is that because of my work with eating disorders and thinking so much about people's relationship to their body and all of that, and having some patients who would talk about liking their hair, but could not like any other aspect of their body, I had started thinking a lot about hair. And sometimes when I was with other women, like staying together in at a conference in a hotel room, the women I was staying with, they would really spend like 45 minutes in the morning on their hair. And I've never done that in my life. I mean, I go to the hairdresser once a month and get something done. But hair has not been a big part of my life. I came from, a family where it was important to be active and doing things. And I was always in the summer in the water swimming. So my hair was like not so important to me. But I started to realize that for other women, it is important. And I got this idea to write about it because I realized that for each woman, it has a different meaning. So I got this idea, Hair Tells a Story. But I literally didn't believe I had a hair story. That all those other people had hair stories, but not me. My hair was just like my hair. Well, as you're writing, you really tune into yourself too, not just to the people you're interviewing and what you're writing. So what I discovered as I was writing is that there are a couple of funny things about me and my hair. First of all, I am really very natural in everything that I do. I spend a lot of time outside. I'm very transparent. There's nothing fake about me. Like I'm the real deal, except my hair color. So isn't that funny? So here I am writing a book about hair because other people have an issue with hair, but I don't have an issue with hair. But and then as I realized this little discrepancy in my life, I realized that I really have never known what color my hair is. Like my whole life, I've never had a sense of my hair color. When I was a kid, people would say to me that they liked how black my hair was, that they saw it as black, and they saw it was blue black in my hair, which I never really saw, but some people did. And then also people would say, all the red highlights in my hair, which I guess in the summer, some red highlights would come in. I don't know. But people were always telling me these things about my hair color, which I didn't really see. Um, so when I was applying for a passport, I was probably in my 30s. There is a really tricky question on the passport application, and it's what color is your hair? So I couldn't answer that question. So I handed in my passport application to the clerk at the post office who takes the passport applications. And she looked at it, she handed it right back and she said, you didn't say what color your hair is. And I said, well, I don't really know what color my hair is. And as she handed it to me, she said, brown.
Oh, okay.
And it was like, it seemed like, that just seems so plain and like ordinary, like it's just brown. And it was just this moment of like, what's wrong with you, girl? You help other women to do all kinds of things, including solve complicated body image and eating disorder problems, and you don't know the color of your hair, and you're writing a book about hair. It was a story. And then as I, wrote more about hair, and I included a chapter about myself and my relationship with my hair in the book, I learned a lot more. So we all have hair stories, and hopefully we can learn from them, and hopefully they're positive, but sometimes they're not. For some women, their hair is really a painful thing.
So what color is your hair for those who are just listening and not looking? What color
Okay.
is your hair?
Well, if you were looking at me, you would see that it's kind of like sort of butterscotchy on top, kind of light butterscotchy, but then there's a lot of gray underneath. So as I got older, the other part of this hair color thing is when I was growing up, I was also told that I looked just like an aunt. And she had died by the age of 30. She was my godmother. I remember her a little bit, but not well, because I was so young when she died. But I looked just like her. And her hair was completely gray by the time she was 30.
Oh.
So this is what I'm starting to hear when I'm like, a teenager. And I'm thinking, and then I started to get a couple gray hairs. So I didn't start coloring my hair when I was 15 or 16, but as I went into my late 20s, into around 30, I was like, I don't want to be entirely gray by the time I'm 30. So my hairstylist started doing henna to cover the gray.
Yeah.
And then after that, we went into heavier stuff because the henna wouldn't really last very long. And so since then, probably like 30, early 30s, I have, my hair has been, colored by my hairstylist the entire time. So now it's a, kind of blondish on top. And then I have more of my natural gray coming in, but on top it's kind of blonde. I couldn't quite make the transition into letting my hair go entirely gray. A friend of mine and I talked about it. We've known each other since like we were 4 or 5. We were both going to do the natural progression together. And during the pandemic, she did it and I didn't. So anyway, that's my story. Like I am thinking I am this nature girl, the real deal, so transparent, but I am a fake.
No, it's just one thing. I think we all have that one thing,
Yeah.
That one thing that bothers us when nothing else
Yeah.
bothers us.
Yeah.
So let me share my story about hair. When I was a
Yeah.
little girl, my mom and dad would take us to the beach, but not a lot. One of the main reasons we didn't go to the beach a lot is because when me and my sister got our hair wet, my mom would have to do our hair, wash our hair when we got home, and fix it so that we could
Mhm.
go to church in the morning, especially
Yeah.
if we went on a Saturday. And most of the times
Yes.
we would go on Saturdays.
Yeah.
So my sister, it was easy breezy for my mom to do my sister's hair
Mhm.
because her hair was a lot thinner than mine. I had thick hair.
Mhm.
And my mom just did not like doing my hair. It took
Yeah.
forever. It was thick. I was younger
Mhm.
than my sister. So it was like she hated it. So when
Mhm.
my great grandfather, he owned businesses, and one of his businesses was a barber shop.
Mhm.
And so he decided to use the back of it for a beauty salon, and he rented it
Oh.
out.
Mhm.
So we started to get our hair done there, and my mother was like loving it. And that's kind of like when I fell in love with
Yeah.
doing hair, becoming a beautician and all that. And I would spend time in the beauty shop, and then I would go in the barber shop with my great granddad and hang out with him. So I learned a lot.
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah.
over time, the manager of the beauty salon started to have some problems. And my great grandfather, we call him Big Daddy, he was a gentle soul, but he did not like messiness and a whole bunch of drama and all that. So when things started to happen, he just shut it down and he was like, I'll just go back to having the barbershop.
Mhm.
So that traumatized my mom
Ah,
because that meant that she would have to go back to doing our hair. And my
yeah.
mom got a taste of somebody else doing me and my sister's hair. And she was like, oh, no, 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 no. So she went searching and she found a beauty salon. And
Yeah.
all three of us would get our hair there done. My
Yeah.
mom would go, me and my sister would go. Hey, the salon, the same lady who did my mom's hair did my sister's hair. And I was the only one that had someone different.
Mhm.
My mom would come on the week that me and my sister didn't come. And I just personally think she did that on purpose so that she would get away from children because she had four of us, two boys and a girl. So
Mhm.
she would book her hair appointments on the
Mhm.
days me and my sister did not get our hair done.
Mhm.
So when we start going, the lady who did my mother's hair started to do my sister's hair. It was a whole different world. I would look across the salon and my sister would be falling asleep. That's how gentle her stylist was. This girl was falling asleep. I, on the other hand, was ouch. It was just terrible. She would wash my hair. My hair was very thick. She would put me underneath the hair dryer
Mhm.
without combing my hair out. So there was tangles. And then she would find the smallest comb in the salon to start combing my hair. I'm like, lady, you need a bigger comb than that. You didn't even comb my hair. It's almost like you wash your hair and you don't put conditioner on it. And so it
Mhm.
tangles up.
Yeah.
And she used to talk on the phone while she was doing my hair. She used to eat while she was doing my hair. I hated it.
Mhm.
But the one time I went and she wasn't there. So the stylist that had been doing my mom and my sister's hair, she did my hair. And I was able to experience what my sister did. And
Mhm.
although my hair was thicker than my sister, I fell asleep too. It was like the best Saturday.
Wow.
I fell asleep. That's how gentle she was. And
Wow.
it didn't matter that my hair was so thick. It was just the stylist herself.
Wow.
But as I grew up, when I graduated from high school, I had my cosmetologist license because of the beauty salon and the hair, the barbershop when I grew up. So that was in me. That's something that I wanted to do. So that's my story about hair.
Yeah.
But you're so correct when you talk about our hair. It's kind of like our crown in glory.
Yes.
And I did have an opportunity to read a little bit about in the book. And one of the things that you were talking about is the difference in cultures in their
Mhm.
hair. And we
Yes.
all have different things. And
Mhm.
like for women of color, it's an event to
Mhm.
go and get our hair done. It is an event. It's almost like an all day thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
How about when you go? Now, I was a cosmetologist, so I know from my perspective because my clientele was I did more Caucasians than I did
Mhm.
Black when
Yeah.
I first
Yeah.
started out. So I
Yeah.
kind of know how it is. But from your perspective, going to the salon, is it an event like ours?
I don't think it's the same kind of event. I think that when you were talking about your mom doing your hair and then finding a stylist and then you all going, I think in the African American culture there are some really rich, deep connections that happen between women around their hair. Sometimes it's not a hairstylist who's doing it, it's a grandmother or an aunt or a neighbor, and it can be a real collective experience for the women in that group. Uh, and if you're living in like a really white culture, a lot of African American women struggle with their hair, trying to make it fit the kind of Eurocentric uh, look that we have here. And it's really a struggle, but and takes a lot of time. For me, hair was never a big thing. My mother wasn't somebody who really fussed. She was a really, pretty woman, but she didn't fuss about her hair. In the summer, we all swam a lot, so we were our head. My head was always wet, and her head was always wet. So she would have her hair pulled up in a ponytail all summer. So I didn't learn that fussy stuff that a lot of girls, both white and African American, learn about their hair and their appearance. And I feel like in some ways that helped me a lot to kind of jump over some of the body image issues that I see in a lot of my patients. So yeah, the experience of the salon was much more, it was a smaller experience, not that much fun. Your mom takes you to the salon she goes to, and that woman like treats you the way your mom does and doesn't see you as a separate person really. And then gradually, as I got older, I was finding my own places. And, as an adult woman, the stylist that I have, I've had for a long, long time, for decades. And she has always worked in a salon that is not at all segregated. A lot of salons they're white salons or they're African American salons, and fortunately, because of who I see, I've been in salons that do men and women and all colors and cultures and all that, which has been a really nice experience, something that I didn't really think about or take that seriously until I was, writing the book and realized what a gift that is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you were doing research for your book, um, what culture or what did you find was the biggest, oh my goodness, I didn't know that moment for you, and again, because I'm coming from the perspective as being a hairstylist, so I've done all types of hair.
Yep.
I never just did one type. It wasn't just African American. I did all types of hair. So I know from my perspective. But from you, what when you were doing your research for your book, you said,
Yep.
"Oh my God,
Yeah.
when was that moment?"
Yeah. I have a really key moment that comes to mind when you ask that question. Um, One of the things I was doing was talking to women about their hair, doing interviews and all that. And I had bumped into a friend, you know, uh, in the center of town. She was waiting for a friend to go out for lunch. It was a summer day. And I bumped into her and we were just talking a little bit. And I told her that I'd started writing this book about hair. And she's an African American woman, really wonderful woman that I've always respected so much, really cool woman. And so here we are standing outside, and I tell her I'm writing a book about hair. And she said, "Hair, that's why I never learned to swim." And she told me that, similar to your experience, going to the beach would ruin her hair after her mom had styled it. And so her mother would never let her go to the beach and ruin her hair. And I heard that from several other, African American women that I was interviewing around that time. And they all said the same thing. It would ruin everything. Um, and that really struck me hard. What a sacrifice for women, to try to meet your Caucasian standards around hair and not being able to learn how to swim. Among other things, swim is enjoyable, but swimming also is like a life-saving technique. Like, it's really important that people know how to swim and know how to get out of water if something happens to them. So it was like one of those stab me in the heart sort of moments, which I've never forgotten. I know exactly where we were standing.
Yeah, but it's because of the world that we grew up in.
Mhm.
Everybody wanted straight hair because that's what's presented before us, that having long straight hair was the
Yep.
model.
Yep.
Everybody, doesn't matter what you look like, every single person needed to have straight hair. And I remember being about 4 years old, and my mom, boy, she was hot with me and my sister. She got very upset. We had
Mhm.
put towels on our head and we were
Yep.
acting like we had long blonde hair with towels. And then we were just playing, and my mom came around the corner. She was like, "What are you doing?"
Mhm.
And she let us know that there's nothing wrong with your hair. Your hair
Yeah.
is perfect the way that it is.
Yeah.
She was like, "You need to take those towels off your head." So anytime we would pretend, we would make sure my mom was not around because that was not something that she put up with. She was like, there's nothing wrong with it. But the images, even our doll babies growing up, they were,
Yes.
with the long hair,
Mhm.
and it
Mhm.
wasn't a lot of our color. But
Yeah.
what I'm so grateful now is that there is a sea of different Barbie dolls. So I don't
Yes.
think the kids that's growing up now
Mhm.
is encountering the things that you encounter growing up
Right.
for the
And
most part.
one of the things that's really also different today is, thank the goddesses, there is a movement to make it really possible for women with all different kinds of hair, with natural hair, and for men also, to wear their hair the way they want to. Um, as of now, in the United States, only 21 states is your right to wear your hair in natural hairstyles, locks, and all of that. In the other states, 29 states, you you can get fired, you can get not hired because you're wearing your hair natural as an African American woman or man. It's not just women; it's also men. There have been stories in the media of boys being having their hair cut off because they were competing and they had natural hair, and that was not okay with the school systems and things like that. So the Crown Act, which stands for Creating a Respectful and Open World for Natural Hair, is a piece of legislation that has been passed by 21 states, and we need it to pass in all 50. And it also has been introduced in Congress so that it will become a federal law. And last year it had passed the House. There's two chambers in Congress, the House. It has to go through that first, and then it has to go through the Senate. So it had passed the House, and then the Senate has to pick it up. The Senate did not get to finally vote on it before the congressional session was over. So it all has to start over again in this session, and it is starting. But also in each state can pass the Crown Act. And if you do in your state, then it's not going to be legal to fire people or not hire people because of their hairstyle. So it's going to protect people of color and allow them to wear their hair as they would like to. In fact, women of color are 30% more likely to be given formal grooming instructions when they're at a job interview or getting a job. And it's just
Oh, I know. I lived it. I mean, you're not
yeah,
telling me anything that I,
right,
I don't even
right,
know. I
right.
know, but I remember when I was in college, I took a human resource because I went for business management, and I took a human resource class. And one of the things that she said, there's certain things that you cannot ask, but
Mhm.
they find a way to get to the answer.
Yes.
And, like you can't ask someone's age. You're not
Mhm.
supposed to
Right,
ask if they have children or how
right.
many children. There are certain things that you cannot ask when
Yeah,
someone applies for a job.
yeah.
But she was telling us how creative that they've gotten, not point
Mhm.
blank asking the questions, but asking you questions and they can figure things out. But one
Mhm.
of the things I remember when I worked in the school, I also worked in school. I've had several jobs. I worked
Mhm.
in the school system, and I remember some we had we didn't have issues with our hair. We could wear our hair any way we wanted to. It didn't matter.
Mhm.
We didn't have those things in the school system. But I remember this girl came to interview for a job, and
Mhm.
she was Caucasian, and her hair was blue and orange, and
Oh.
she had it in two ponytails. And I sat there and I thought to myself, okay, she came for a job. Her hair is orange and blue, and they're in ponytails.
Mhm.
Did she know what the job was? Did she
Mhm.
know? And I feel like sometimes when we do something, like we're starting to put things in perspective for us, people of color, because we're the ones who suffered the most from
Yes.
those types of things. But I also think that other people will take advantage of that
Mhm.
and use it and it almost make it worse,
Mhm.
kind of make it bad, because I don't understand how you come to an interview with blue
Yes.
and orange hair and
Right.
ponytails for a position
Right.
in a school system.
Right. Seems a
You
little
know,
disrespectful.
I thought it was. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I went in and I said to my principal, well, um, we have your next, she's here, her hair's blue and orange, and she kind of like, but I wanted to warn her because I didn't want the girl to
Yeah.
go in or whatever. But I
Yeah.
just think that it's a good thing, but I think also people will take advantage of it because
Mhm.
God only knows what's going to show up
Yeah.
in interviews and on jobs now when you start opening the door for people of color. But we're the ones that suffered the most. And I
Yes.
just hope and pray that that's not what's going to happen,
Yeah.
because then they'll say, well, we opened the door for you and look what happened.
Yeah. Yeah. You suffer and you have to spend a lot of time, which also is a lot of money on your hair to get it looking in a way that it doesn't naturally look. And it's fine if that's what you want it to look like. But if it's because you can't get a job, if you have natural hair, that's not fine. Um,
Exactly.
the right to choose is not just a reproductive right. We should be able to wear our hair the way we want to, and especially for women of color. I'm very passionate about that. I'm glad we're talking about this.
Yeah, I mean, we have had some issues. I can honestly say I've never had, well, let me take it back. It was one, there was a comment made. There was a comment made about my hair. I didn't change it, but there was just a comment that was made about my hair. But I can't say that I've had any issue with it. But I'm one of those people. I'm a cosmetologist, so I learned how to swim. I got in the water. I didn't mind doing my hair. I would blow dry it, I would curl it,
That's
or I would
great.
do whatever
That's
about it.
great.
But I'm loving the fact that women of color now, we don't have all those limitations,
Mhm, mhm.
and it's gotten to the point. I think that is one of the reasons why a lot of African Americans have their own business, because you can't tell me now because it's my business. It's my hair.
Yeah.
I can do what I want. And but there was something else that I wanted to ask you about. In the book, you talked about Chris Rock
Yes.
and his movie.
Yeah.
Did you do research there, or you just watched the movie and pull from that?
I watched the movie a couple of times, and then I read as much as I could uh, about him. But yeah, the movie Hair, I'm sorry, Good Hair, was
Mhm.
when Chris Rock's daughter was 3ish. She told him she wanted good hair, and he had never heard that term before. But any woman has heard that term, and we know what it means. It means that you want white hair, you want that straight hair.
Is
Um,
that in your culture the same thing? You
yes,
consider good hair
yes,
with straight blonde hair,
yes,
or just,
yes.
oh, I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, not to the same extent, not to the same like discriminatory extent, but yeah, like that long blonde hair. Yeah. Um, so he was really concerned because he knew it was like this was his little girl who was beautiful, wanted to be something else, wanted to have good hair, which she felt she didn't have. So he did a lot of research. He, interviewed a lot of people, and then created this really wonderful movie that really tells the story of what it's like to have natural hair as an African American in our culture. And I think that movie also helped to raise the consciousness. That movie came out a long time ago.
Oh
I know I've
yeah,
got it in
I
the
think
book.
you can watch
Maybe,
it on Netflix now, because
yes,
I think that is a good starting place if you want to look
yes,
for it, is Netflix to find it.
yes, yeah. And that's why, do you remember last year at the Grammys when Chris Rock had made that insulting comment about Jada Plunkett? And and then her husband got up
Yeah,
and
you
slapped
know
him
all
across the
about,
face on the
yeah.
stage. Yeah, that was the irony for me, was that Chris Rock had opened people's eyes to the issue of good hair. And then he makes this horrible comment, and then it becomes this huge interaction that was,
You
two
know,
men.
I saw it, and I thought about, and you're correct when you say about him doing the thing, but that was when I look at the different components of Chris Rock,
Mhm.
that moment, it was his career as being a comedian. He
Yes,
was
right.
being funny, it was comedian.
Yep.
The other one with the film was more so him being a dad, him
Yeah.
wanting to help his daughters to understand about hair and how beautiful they are and all that. So he
Yeah.
was in a different element. Now,
Yes.
my whole to sum up that whole thing, it should have been word for word, not hand to hand. And
Yeah.
that's the way I
Yes.
look at
Right.
it. It should have
Right.
been word for word. It
Right.
should have never been hand to hand because
Right.
you moved it into a whole nother level.
Right.
And I
Right.
remember being on an interview and somebody asked me that, and I said, I'm just going to be simple. It should
Yeah.
word for word or
Yes.
hand for hand,
Yeah.
period.
Right.
But the book is really good. She has a lot of you talk to a lot of different people
Yeah. Yeah.
and got their stories
Yeah.
about their hair, which I really like. I love the fact that you did like research. You really wanted
Yeah.
to know about it.
Yeah.
I think if I were doing a story, I probably would do research like you. But who was
Yeah.
your favorite person?
Oh, I don't know that I had a favorite person. I mean, my friend who said that she wasn't able to learn to swim, that, as I said, was one of those powerful moments. There were so many powerful moments, and there still are powerful moments coming, even though my research is done and the book is out. I'll give you an example. I I sent a copy of the book to a woman that I know. She's approaching 80. She's 78, 80-ish through there. So she's older. And she's a really bright woman. I really value her. And I just thought, I'd love to have her read the book and tell me what she thinks. So she called me, shortly after getting the book, and she had read it. And she said, I love the book. I want you to know, I found my problem immediately. It explains everything about my life. And then she went on to say that when she was a little girl, she had appendicitis, and her mother called the pediatrician because she was in severe pain. And the pediatrician said, you have to bring her to the hospital right away. He could tell from how the mom described it that that it was appendicitis, and you got to get to the hospital. You got to remove that appendix before it bursts. Her mother stopped at the hairdresser and got her hair done on the way to the hospital.
Oh,
And so for this woman, it felt like it explained, she said, it explains everything about my life, like not being able to like meet my own needs and feel like I'm important because my mother needed to stop and get her hair done when I had appendicitis.
yeah, she
And
felt
then
like
it
she wasn't
also,
a priority.
yes, so that's a piece of it. And also that, the mother's hair was so important to the mother. So both of those pieces. And so I keep on hearing stories, even though all the research is done and that story is not in the book. Um, it's for so many women, hair is just, it's the way they define themselves. It's the way they try to improve their lives by having their hair improved. For many women, they also do a change of hairstyle when they're going through a difficult time in their lives, a transition
Yes,
time, or
absolutely.
when they lose someone. Um, so it's it has much more meaning than what we have ever given it in the past.
But now that is something that I think it's not a culture thing. I think it's across the board.
Yes, I
That
agree.
yes, there are certain things that it doesn't matter what color you are.
Yeah.
Some things are just what women do, and I
Yes.
don't think all, but there are a lot of women like if they get a divorce, they may chop their hair off if
Yeah.
their husband
Yeah.
like long hair, or they
Yeah.
may go and get their hair dyed black when he liked blonde hair, or they would
Yes.
do
Right.
something like that.
Right.
But did you talk to any other cultures, or was it?
Yeah, I would say that a lot of white women, a lot of African American women, different ethnicities, different religions. Uh, so not obviously not every culture is represented, but in terms of who lives in the United States, a lot of that is represented.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
Okay, well, that's a
Uh,
good one. Oh, go ahead.
um, I also, I mentioned things like the issues that women especially have in the repressive cultures like Iran, where, a woman was actually killed by the police last September because she had her hair coming out of her head covering.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yes. And so, like, there is so much control and oppression of women that happens around their hair that was sort of like invisible because, especially in the United States, we don't, we don't have as much of that. We take a lot for granted, but I really am touched by the ways in which hair is important and a sign of really being able to control our lives, control our destiny. And for some women, that is not the case. As you mentioned, some women will change their hair when they get divorced because the husband was controlling it so much.
Mm-hmm.
And I certainly heard stories like that, a husband or a father or a grandfather not letting them have their hair the way they wanted it to be. So it has an incredible impact on a woman.
It really does. But we've been talking about women the whole time, but men and baldness. Now that
Yeah,
goes across the board. Doesn't matter what
yeah,
color you are, men and
yeah,
baldness, and
yeah,
they get hair plugs and all that. So I think men are really starting, their hair is their glory as well.
yes, right.
When the receding high hairlines and
Yeah,
going bald and gray. Oh my God. I saw this man
yeah.
the other day, and he don't know who I am, and he had the worst dye job in the world. I'm like, let it go, sir. I wanted to say, sir, just let it go. Let go, gray baby. Just let it go. It was so bad. It looked
Yeah,
like he did it himself. So
yeah,
I think men, they are just as bad as some men are just as bad as women when it comes to our hair.
yeah,
So tell us, I'm so glad we talked about this subject because, like you said, right now it's so in the forefront now
yes,
because of the discrimination and all the things that's
yes,
going on, with our hair. But I'm so glad you're here and you have a book that's out. So tell us where we can get the book.
yeah,
And I know that you have some other books. So tell us about where we
yeah,
can get this book and,
yeah,
any of your other books.
yeah. My book, Hair Tells a Story, Hers, Yours, and Ours, came out in January, so it's brand new. You can get it through Amazon and really any other bookstore. I love if people can support their small bookstores, but
Mhm.
Barnes and Noble, the Bookshop, Target, all kinds of places have it. Uh, Amazon, of course, is the easiest way to get a book, but how about
Yes.
going into your local bookstore and ordering it? It's, it's a new book and it's not on the bestseller list, so it's not going to be on the shelf when you walk in, but you can have a book ordered at any bookstore. And I think you'll like it. I think there's something for everybody in this book.
Yeah, I started to
Yeah,
read. Like I said, I didn't get a chance to read the whole book, but I
yeah,
went through and I read some of the stories in there, and it's a really good book, and it's
yeah,
good from a different perspective.
yeah,
Especially, if you're African American, it's a good to find things from other people's perspective, how they
yeah,
see. So it's a really good book.
yeah,
And tell us about where you can get your other books because she's a great writer. She
yeah,
has several
yeah,
books out there.
yeah,
And I do
yeah,
believe we have one on there about eating disorders, just in case we have someone that's
yeah,
listening that may
yeah,
have an issue with that.
yeah, yeah. My other books are all about eating disorders because that's where my career has been. Um, and all of the books that I wrote, excuse me, Hair Tells a Story, and the others I'll mention in a minute, I'm the first person who's written about them. So Hair Tells a Story is the first book that really tries to bring together the psychological and the cultural and the political aspects of hair. Um, so it's unique in that way. My first book was called Father Hunger, Fathers, Daughters, and the Pursuit of Thinness, because lots of times when we think about eating disorders and body image and things like that, we think about the mother's influence on a daughter, but fathers also are part of this. They might have unhealthy attitudes towards women's bodies. They might be absent and not very involved with their daughters. There's lots of things that go on with fathers, and they're as
Especially
important
if
as
you have
mothers.
a fluffy child.
Yes.
Just saying.
Yes.
Just
Yeah, that's a good
it's so
point.
true.
Yeah. So that was and I was the first person to write about fathers, and I think that's a really important topic. I wrote a book called Body Wars, Making Peace with Women's Bodies. And there's so many things in our culture that tell us as women, black, white, or any other color, to hate our bodies, not to accept our bodies, but to always try to be changing them. And usually some corporation is making a lot of money off our changing our bodies. So that book called Body Wars is about how to fight back against the culture. So that was my second book.
Mm.
And then I wrote a book called The Body Myth, which is about uh, women's bodies at midlife. I redid that again in 2016, Pursuing Perfection. And that's again about eating disorders and body image issues for women at midlife. And I wrote two books that are kind of like textbooks for people in the field. Um,
Oh, okay.
yeah, so I've done a lot of writing, but they're all available, through bookstores or Amazon. And I think particularly Hair Tells a Story and my last book before that, Pursuing Perfection, they have a lot of appeal to women.
Well, good. So I will make sure that that's in the description, and I believe you sent me the names of the books. So
Yes, yeah,
so
you have
I'll
those.
make sure I have that. So if
Yeah,
you're curious, or if you need it, if you're struggling with your weight, too too small, too
yeah,
big,
right.
anything that
Yeah,
you have, these are resources that you can use. They're
yes,
available. So just go in the, when you're listening to it, just go
yeah.
down in the description, you'll find it, click on it, and just get the book and get help if you need it. If you have issues with your hair, if you're struggling with your hair, and first of all, don't worry about what other people say about your hair. You are beautiful. Your hair is beautiful. And if you don't like it, there's so many things you can do. You can wear a wig, you can get extensions. There's so many things that you can do. You can get braids. It's so many things you can do to make yourself feel good. So never let anybody make you feel bad about how your hair looks. You are beautiful. With that said, so thank you,
I
Margo, for
love
being
that
here.
message. Thank you, Ms. V.
Thank you for being here and just sharing. And you guys, please go out and support her. Even if you don't get the hair book, the other one, if you need it, it doesn't matter. At least it's a resource. So thank you.
Thanks so much for having me on. I enjoyed talking to you so much.
Thank you.